Welcome. Today we are undertaking what is a truly necessary and a profoundly sober examination of one of the most tragic events in the history of professional sports.
We are, of course, talking about the double murder and suicide committed by the professional wrestler Chris Benoit.
It was an event that unfolded over a catastrophic three-day period from June 22nd to June 24th, 2007, at his home in Fayetteville, Georgia.
The gravity of this subject is, well, it's absolute, and we approach it with the deepest respect for the victims.
The facts that we're going to explore involve 40-year-old Chris Benoit, his wife, 43-year-old Nancy Elizabeth Benoit, and their 7-year-old son, Daniel Christopher Benoit.
Our mission here is to meticulously review the official chronology, the forensic evidence, and the competing explanations that emerged.
Right. We're looking at everything from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, to substance abuse, and of course the underlying domestic issues.
And we must maintain absolute professionalism and solemnity throughout, especially when discussing the murders of Nancy and Daniel. This event triggered federal investigations and forced significant changes in the wrestling industry.
To really understand it, we have to start with the timeline, because his actions during those 48 hours present a really terrifying paradox of control and complete chaos. So let's begin there with the police and autopsy reports and piece together that sequence of events.
It all began on the night of Friday, June 22nd.
That's when Nancy Benoit was killed.
She was killed first, yes. Her body was found in what was described as the bonus room of their home. The autopsy later confirmed her cause of death was asphyxiation, specifically strangulation.
And what the official reports reveal about her death is, it's perhaps the most chilling indicator of premeditation.
This wasn't a crime of sudden, uncontrollable rage.
Not at all. Nancy was restrained. Her arms were bound with coaxial cables, and her feet were duct taped together.
The police also found evidence that suggested an intent to silence her.
Right? They retrieved a balled-up tube sock and tape from the kitchen trash,
Which investigators believed was used as a makeshift gag. I mean, this just speaks to a disturbing level of planning.
of complete intent to incapacitate her.
The physical evidence left very little doubt about the method. The injuries indicated that Benoit had pressed a knee into her back while he was tightening a cord around her neck,
And officials noted there were no signs of a physical struggle in the room.
which suggests the binding may have happened first, or, she might have been incapacitated before the final act.
To add another layer to the inexplicable ritualistic nature of it all, her body was found wrapped in a blanket.
And a Bible was placed right alongside her.
The toxicology reports for Nancy, they did present some initial complexities for investigators.
Right. Alcohol was present, but because of decomposition, it was difficult to tell if that was from before her death or just a byproduct of the body breaking down.
But crucially, the medical examiners found hydrocodone and alprazolam, which is a generic form of Xanax.
They were at what they called therapeutic levels.
But they were very explicit in noting that there was no evidence she was sedated to the same extent as her son.
Which brings us to the next day, Saturday morning, June 23rd.
Sometime that morning, or perhaps early afternoon, he murdered his 7-year-old son, Daniel.
Daniel was Chris's third child, but he was the only child he shared with Nancy.
And he was killed in his bedroom. Suffocated.
The forensic findings here are important. There were internal injuries to the throat area, suggesting compression, suffocation, but no external bruises on his body.
And just like with Nancy, a Bible was found next to Daniel's body.
Maintaining that bizarre, almost ritualistic element to the entire crime scene.
The toxicology reports for Daniel they're devastating.
It was determined that he was heavily sedated when he was killed,
Xanax was found in his system.
and at a level that led the district attorney to later emphasize, this is not a drug that's normally prescribed to a child.
So the level of sedation meant Daniel was likely unconscious?
Yes, unconscious at the time of his death.
The state of decomposition between the two victims was actually key to establishing the timeline, wasn't it?
It was. Decomposition had only just begun on Daniel's body, so police could confirm he was killed substantially later than his mother.
Maybe a full day after her.
Approximately, yes. Which really reinforces this idea that it wasn't a single spontaneous event, but a planned sequence that took place over 3 days.
And the 48 hours between that first murder and the final suicide they're just deeply unsettling, because he continued to communicate with the outside world.
He was maintaining this veneer of normalcy while the bodies of his wife and son were in the house.
On the afternoon of Saturday, June 23rd, he actually contacted his close friend and fellow wrestler, Chavo Guerrero.
Guerrero got a voicemail from Benoit. The message claimed that Nancy and Daniel were severely ill with food poisoning.
So when Guerrero called him back, Benoit sounded, what, tired? Groggy?
Tired and groggy, yes. He confirmed the food poisoning story. Guerrero grew concerned about his tone and called him back again just 12 minutes later.
And in that second call,
Benoit said he was coordinating with WWE and Delta Airlines, changing his flight for the Vengeance pay-per-view event that was scheduled for the next night.
he kept up the story,
Yeah.
said he was under extreme stress because of the illness.
And when Guerrero offered support, saying, if you need to talk, I'm here for you, Benoit ended the call with a very specific phrase.
Chavo, I love you.
The emphasis on that affection, while he's lying about the welfare of his family, it just creates this profound psychological contradiction that investigators had to grapple with.
And the communications didn't stop there. They continued right into Sunday morning.
Between about 3:51 a.m. and 3:58 a.m. on Sunday, June 24th, 5 cryptic text messages were sent.
From both his phone and Nancy's phone. To coworkers, Guerrero and referee Scott Armstrong.
4 of those texts were eerily simple, just the Benoit's home address.
And the fifth one added a small detail.
That the family's dogs were in the enclosed pool area and that a garage side door had been left open.
These texts were the ultimate red flag.
A desperate, obscured communication asking for discovery without explicitly confessing.
Benoit, of course, failed to show up for his flight to Houston. Later that Sunday morning, he called WWE's Talent Relations office.
And he claimed that Daniel was still vomiting and that he and Nancy were at the hospital with him.
He even promised to take a later flight, but he never appeared for the Vengeance event.
The fact that he was constructing these elaborate, detailed lies while his deceased family was in the house, it speaks volumes about his deteriorating mental state.
So the suicide itself occurred sometime on the evening of Sunday, June 24th.
That's right. The police reports determined he committed suicide by hanging in his exercise room. He used a lat pull-down machine.
He fashioned a noose from the cord and then released the heavyweights, causing strangulation.
He was found hanging from the pulley cable. But the exact manner of his death, that immediately became a point of conflict.
Nancy's sister, Sandra Toffaloni, she publicly claimed that his computer search history showed he'd researched the quickest and easiest way to break a neck,
suggesting he used the heavyweights on the machine to snap his neck instantly.
But that claim was contradicted by the official reports.
It was. The police and autopsy reports indicated no damage to the neck area other than from the cable.
The forensic pathologist made no mention of damage to his cervical vertebrae, his hyoid bone, trachea, or larynx area.
All things you would expect to see from a violent, weight-assisted dislocation. This suggests a death by strangulation, which is consistent with the method he used on his wife.
And this inconsistency is magnified when you look at the computer research that was confirmed in the police report for that time period.
It wasn't about rapid suicide methods.
No, it was about the biblical prophet Elijah's resurrection of a dead child.
And you have this profound conflict there. The binding and sedating, the placing of Bibles, the alleged research into breaking a neck, and then the actual search for biblical resurrection.
It just suggests a mind gripped by religious mania, by premeditation, and by just utter confusion.
The whole tragedy came to a head on Monday, June 25th.
Right. WWE executives were concerned after the cryptic texts and 24 hours without contact, so they requested a welfare check from the Fayetteville police.
When police gained entry, they discovered the 3 bodies and notified WWE around 4:15 p.m. Central Time.
Initially, the police stated that no suicide note was found,
which just added to the mystery. But weeks later, Benoit's estranged father, Michael, he stated publicly that a handwritten note saying, "I'm preparing to leave this earth," was found.
It was in a Bible that had been sent to Chris's first wife.
But even that is highly disputed. Chris's eldest son, David, later said that no note was left. And importantly, he emphasized that his father had planned for him to visit the following week.
Which just underscores the profound cognitive dissonance at play. Planning a visit while executing a murder-suicide.
So once the horrifying facts of the chronology were established, the world demanded an explanation.
And the search for a motive immediately fractured into 3 distinct fields: the medical, the chemical, and the emotional. Let's start with the scientific investigation into CTE.
This is where the medical community provided the first concrete physiological explanation. The hypothesis was driven by Christopher Nowinski, a neuroscientist and former wrestler.
Nowinski had established the Sports Legacy Institute. He argued that given Benoit's history, he must have suffered from repeated, untreated concussions.
And Nowinski specifically cited Benoit's willingness to take a chair shot directly to the back of the head, which is an incredibly dangerous practice.
His advocacy led to testing.
Yes, by Dr. Julian Bales at West Virginia University and Dr. Bennett Omalu, the physician who pioneered the study of CTE in football players.
And their forensic findings were definitive.
Absolutely. Benoit suffered from severe CTE, confirming stage 3 or possibly even stage 4, the most advanced forms of the disease.
The extent of the damage was, well, shocking. The medical conclusion was that his brain was so structurally damaged it resembled that of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient.
And what's critical here is where that damage was. It was widespread. It affected all 4 lobes of the brain and the brainstem,
Including the frontal lobe.
which is responsible for executive function, impulse control, judgment, emotional regulation, all the things that appeared to have failed catastrophically.
This connects directly back to that 48-hour timeline we reviewed. Dr. Bales and his colleagues concluded that the repeated concussions led to this severe form of dementia.
And that dementia can manifest not just as memory loss, but as extreme behavioral problems. Paranoia, impulse control failures, fits of aggression.
Benoit's father even went on record stating this brain damage must have been the primary cause.
This finding was a turning point, not just for wrestling, but for all contact sports. Benoit's diagnosis was pivotal in bringing widespread awareness to CTE outside of football and boxing.
And it led to post-mortem diagnoses in other deceased wrestlers, right? Andrew Martin or Test and Balls Mahoney.
Exactly. It demonstrated a systemic risk within the entire industry.
Now, this is where the analytical conflict begins. While the medical community provided this physiological motive, WWE, they immediately raised skepticism.
They did. In their public statements, they described the CTE findings as speculative.
They challenged it by pointing out the complex, demanding nature of his job. They asked if his brain was like that of an 85-year-old with Alzheimer's, how could he even find his way to an airport, let alone remember the intricate choreography of a wrestling match?
It's a crucial point of conflict, but the neurologists have a counter to that. That CTE doesn't necessarily attack all cognitive functions equally or instantly. It often targets executive functions and emotional regulation first.
Leaving the learned, muscle memory tasks like performing wrestling moves intact until later stages.
Precisely. Which allowed him to maintain a high-level performance while his emotional life and his judgment just completely collapsed. It offers a potential explanation for that mix of premeditation and bizarre communications.
This brings us to the second major area of focus, the role of steroids and the overall toxicology report, which the media immediately latched onto.
It was a more easily digestible narrative than complex brain science.
Right. Initial speculation, fueled by the discovery of steroids in the home, instantly focused on the roid rage theory.
The idea that anabolic steroid use can trigger sudden, uncontrollable anger, paranoia, and psychosis.
This theory was pushed hard by the press, but WWE itself was quick to challenge it.
And this is a key insight into corporate crisis management versus medical fact. Their rebuttal was strategically motivated.
They argued that the physical findings suggested deliberation, not sudden rage.
Pointing to the binding of Nancy, the time lapse between the murders, the Bibles, they suggested the premeditated nature of the crime directly contradicted the typical spontaneous, explosive nature of a roid rage incident.
And the World Anti-Doping Agency supported them on this.
They did. An official stated that the methodical nature of the crime meant it was likely a premeditated act, and that's not rage. By focusing on premeditation, WWE subtly shifted focus away from the CTE findings and, well, away from the systemic drug use in their own organization.
So what did the toxicology reports actually say?
For Benoit, he tested negative for blood alcohol. Xanax and hydrocodone were present, but at therapeutic levels.
But his urine sample contained elevated levels of testosterone cypionate,
A synthetic anabolic steroid. Yes, indicating recent use.
and this finding, combined with the other prescription drugs in the home, that fed directly into a much larger federal investigation.
It did. Federal prosecutors in New York began investigating the mail-order deliveries he received from online pharmacies,
Like Signature Pharmacy and MedXLife.com.
known for illegally supplying steroids and HGH to professional athletes.
And this investigation revealed the scale of the abuse was systemic. It fueled a specific federal inquiry into WWE's wellness policy.
And this tragedy directly led to the prosecution of Benoit's personal physician, Dr. Phil Aston.
He was charged with overprescribing medication, illegally prescribing drugs without properly examining patients first.
Aston eventually pleaded guilty to a staggering 175 counts. He was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison.
Which proves the problem wasn't just one man's chemical use, but a massive systemic failure, enabling widespread access to these drugs.
And that contextualizes the third major area of focus, the deep domestic and emotional factors present in the Benoit household.
Including a major early confusion about Daniel's health.
Early on, sensational claims surfaced that Daniel had the genetic disorder Fragile X syndrome.
And that this condition had caused severe domestic problems. A friend, Chris Benoit, even initially supported this theory.
The claims went further, alleging there were track marks on Daniel's arms from human growth hormone injections because Chris supposedly considered him undersized.
This narrative provided a tragic emotional motive, suggesting Chris was trying to fix his son.
But these claims were later and unequivocally refuted by official sources.
The Fayette County District Attorney, Scott Ballard, confirmed that multiple sources with access to Daniel's medical files found no mention of any pre-existing conditions.
And his teachers reported he was academically on par with his peers.
Nancy's sister, Sandra Toffaloni, firmly shut down the rumors as well. She specifically denied Daniel had Fragile X and called the claims of track marks preposterous.
So it appears these were attempts by people close to the family to construct some kind of palatable explanation for something that was, just incomprehensible.
But marital dysfunction was a documented issue.
It was. Nancy has filed for divorce in 2003, citing domestic abuse, though she withdrew it 3 months later.
There are also reports of ongoing tension. Nancy suspecting Chris of an affair, arguments over a life insurance policy just before the tragedy.
One of the most poignant emotional details came from their close friend and neighbor, Dave Pencer.
He observed that the couple's existing dysfunction escalated significantly after the fatal overdose of their friend, wrestler Johnny Grunge, in 2006.
Grunge was, in essence, the couple's stabilizing force.
Their go-to for marriage problems.
Exactly. He helped them navigate their frequent arguments. After his death, the couple became more isolated, more private. Pencer speculated that had Grunge been alive, he might have been the one person Chris would have called during that weekend and maybe could have diverted the disaster.
The fallout from the discovery was an institutional earthquake. It forced WWE to execute a rapid and a very painful shift in corporate strategy and public relations.
The first, highly visible reaction was on Monday, June 25th, the very night the bodies were found.
WWE canceled its scheduled live Monday Night Raw program.
And it's darkly ironic that this show was originally planned as a memorial for the fictional Mr. McMahon character.
Instead, before the full, horrific facts were known, WWE aired a 3-hour tribute to Benoit's life and career.
With highlight reels, comments from peers praising his talent, Vince McMahon opened the broadcast paying tribute to one of the greatest WWE superstars of all time.
That tribute was completely revoked the very next night.
Once the facts were confirmed by police, WWE pivoted with absolute speed. On Tuesday, June 26th, Vince McMahon aired a terse, recorded statement.
He dedicated the show to the victims and declared, "Other than my comments, there will be no mention of Mr. Benoit's name tonight."
And that statement marked the beginning of what we now refer to as the systematic and ongoing WWE policy of erasure.
A comprehensive effort to remove him from their institutional memory.
It was immediate and thorough. They removed his biography, news articles, the video tribute comments, all scrubbed from their website. The tribute episode was pulled from all international markets.
And the policy extended deep into their content catalog. He was removed, along with his signature move, the Crippler Crossface, from the WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 video game.
The crossface move did eventually return, but under a generic name to obscure its association.
The way his footage is handled on the WWE network now, it just demonstrates this ongoing effort of omission.
The tribute show is gone. McMahon's opening statement is edited out, and if you search his name on the platform, you get 0 results. His matches are listed only by opponents and stipulations.
So even when archival footage is unavoidable, like in title lineage lists or biographical videos for other wrestlers, his image is deliberately obscured.
Right. During Kurt Angle's 2017 Hall of Fame video, there's a clip of his famous match with Benoit, but the shot is distant, so his face is unrecognizable.
The goal is to acknowledge the historical fact of the match without granting the performer any institutional recognition.
And at the same time, this event triggered severe governmental and legal scrutiny.
The U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform launched a significant investigation into WWE's talent wellness policy.
A serious, federally mandated inquiry. Congressional requests were made to examine steroid use, citing that in the first year of WWE's testing program, a staggering 40% of wrestlers tested positive.
And the committee's investigation went deeper than just positive tests.
It did. It scrutinized therapeutic use exemptions, or TUEs, which allow wrestlers to use banned substances for alleged medical reasons. The investigation highlighted how easily wrestlers could secure these questionable TUEs.
Beyond substance abuse, the CTE findings led to class action litigation.
Influenced by the successful NFL concussion settlement, over 60 former wrestlers filed a class action lawsuit against WWE.
Their claim was that the company had systematically concealed the risks of head injury and CTE.
The legal outcome, however, was not what they hoped for. The lawsuit was ultimately dismissed in 2018.
The judge invoked a form of knowledge defense.
She did. She ruled that the circumstances of the Benoit deaths were so public and the link to CTE so widely reported that it would have been reasonable for other wrestlers to deduce they were at risk and seek medical help on their own.
And the Supreme Court declined to hear the case in 2021.
Effectively ending that litigation.
Before we conclude this section, we have to address that highly unusual detail that complicated the investigation.
The Wikipedia precedent.
It's a remarkable detail. A statement about Nancy's death was mysteriously added to Chris Benoit's Wikipedia article 14 hours before the bodies were officially discovered.
The edit claimed he was replaced in a match due to personal issues stemming from the death of his wife Nancy, and it was timestamped at 4:01 a.m. Eastern Time.
The initial investigation of the IP address traced back to Stamford, Connecticut.
The location of WWE headquarters. It suggested a possible insider source.
But the anonymous poster was eventually identified as a student, Matthew Greenberg. He claimed it was a terrible coincidence based on online rumors he'd read.
Police investigated him thoroughly. They called the posting an unbelievable hindrance to their investigation because it confused the timeline. But they ultimately declined to press charges, believing he was otherwise uninvolved.
The sheer magnitude of this tragedy forced permanent, lasting shifts in the content and safety structure of the wrestling industry.
One of the most visible changes was the shift in WWE's target audience. In July 2008, they held their final pay-per-view with a TV-14 rating.
And they transitioned almost immediately to the current TV-PG rating,
which resulted in a severe toning down of the edgy content, the explicit violence, the themes that characterized that previous era.
More importantly for athlete safety, the promotion soon prohibited deliberate blading.
Meaning wrestlers could no longer intentionally cut themselves to draw blood. This was a direct response to the horrific link between head trauma and the overall physical risks brought to light by the CTE findings.
And Christopher Nowinski, the neuroscientist who initiated the brain examination, he's noted that this tragedy was the catalyst that finally led modern promotions to adopt standardized concussion protocols.
A crucial, life-saving change stemming directly from this horrific situation.
When we discuss the legacies of the individuals involved, the distinction is clear and deeply painful.
Nancy and Daniel were cremated. Their ashes were placed in small, starfish-shaped urns for Nancy's family. A memorial service was held for them in Daytona Beach.
Chris Benoit was also cremated after a private service in Canada. And his professional legacy, well, it remains a source of profound conflict.
The debate over his induction into the WWE Hall of Fame is still highly charged. Wrestlers like Steve Austin and Chris Jericho have publicly stated that because of his unforgivable actions, he should never be enshrined there.
But that position is contested by others, like his eldest son, David Benoit, and Vicky Guerrero. They've supported his potential induction based solely on his accomplishments in the ring, separating the performer from the man.
And at the same time, there's a strong and growing movement to advocate for Nancy's inclusion in the Hall of Fame.
For her own significant contributions to the industry as a valet and manager.
Recognizing her own professional legacy separate from the tragedy.
In terms of broader media, the story has continued to draw attention. A planned biopic titled Crossface was announced.
But that was canceled after a legal dispute with the family. The incident was later revisited, and quite successfully, in the 2020 Dark Side of the Ring documentary.
Which provided intimate interviews with surviving family members and friends, and it really helped to humanize the victims and explain the complexity of the circumstances.
As we conclude this intensive review, we reflect upon the difficult facts. The meticulous, premeditated chronology of the murders of Nancy and Daniel Benoit, the sedation of Daniel, the profound evidence of severe CTE, the systemic substance abuse, and the ensuing upheaval that exposed the hidden risks in professional contact sports.
This profound loss of life was the horrific result of a complex, toxic confluence of factors. Catastrophic brain damage leading to dementia and paranoia, the confirmed presence of substances, and deep personal turmoil that was exacerbated by the loss of stabilizing influences in his life.
The event served as a brutal and unforgettable lesson about the extreme physical toll and the hidden psychological dangers involved in contact athletics. It ultimately forced a reluctant industry to finally implement health and safety protocols aimed at protecting its athletes from a similar fate.
We thank you for undertaking this solemn and necessary review of the source material with us. Thanks for listening.